Hello, everyone. Well, it's time for some American Republic knowledge. And I want to let you know I have revised our schedule for the next couple of days. We're going to tackle Bourbon Reconstruction today. And then we are tomorrow going to look at the recovery in the South. That will, in essence, finish the chapter. And on Friday, we're having our Zoom meeting. And on Monday, you're going to do some chapter review stuff. And on Tuesday, next Tuesday, you're going to have a test. So unless we move it up to Monday, it's going to be open book. So we'll see how that works. But either Monday or Tuesday, we may skip the review since it's open book and do the test on Monday. But we will finish the chapter tomorrow. And then we will have the Zoom class on Friday. The Bourbon Reconstruction is a very short section, but I want to go through it real quickly. Now, the term Bourbon Reconstruction is basically, it's a nickname. It's about a politician that clings to old ideas. And it was basically geared towards Southern politicians who still like the old ideas of the South and those type of things. And what they would do, they would try to oust Republicans. We're going to talk about in a little bit. The United States government finally pulled the military out of the South. And when they did that, Democrats started to take over again. And the only way they could get elected, now that blacks had the right to vote, is they had to not cater, but talk to the blacks and give them promises of power and promises of this and that, and then not follow through or give them very little power. So it was that's where the term comes from. It had nothing to do with alcohol or anything else. It was a bourbon politician, and so but it's called Bourbon Reconstruction. So those are the three phases of Reconstruction that we've talked about. We'll finish that phase, the third phase, today. And you've got to understand, Reconstruction has been going on for some time now. And people are tired of it. What's happening out west? We've got westward expansion. We've got Indian wars going on. There's all kinds of cool stuff, interesting stuff out there. And we're still fighting over Reconstruction. We're still fighting over giving blacks rights. And that's the way the people looked at it. You can hear my dog in the background. I apologize. And the country was sick of scandal and controversy and the carpetbaggers and the scallions. They were sick of hearing of it. And so that's where Bourbon Reconstruction comes in. In 1872, liberal Republicans convinced Congress to pardon most of the former Confederate leaders. Okay? It was called the General Amnesty Act. General Amnesty Act. And it pardoned all but just a couple of hundred of the Confederates. So that's very important because they did not want to pardon them. That's going to put them back in power. They're going to regain some of their influence in government at that point. Now, some blacks were still holding office. In fact, your book mentions a couple of them that are very important. Joseph Rainey of South Carolina, he was the first ever black elected to Congress. And then Hiram Revels, or he was House of Representatives, Hiram Revels of Mississippi, first black man ever elected to the U.S. Senate. So during this time, there were still some blacks being elected. Some of them were judges, most of them northern ones that were sent to the South. And blacks had gained a lot of rights, but the Southerners were still not accepting it. They weren't going along with it. You may have the right on paper, but they did not agree. So it was still a terrible, tumultuous time in the country, but a lot of the North is done with it. They're fed up with it. And then you have the election of 1876. Now, we mentioned Grant's scandals yesterday, and he had scandal after scandal, and so people were tired of it. So the Republican Party decides they're going to nominate someone else as their candidate for the election of 1876. Democrats picked a guy by the name of Samuel J. Tilden. And Rutherford B. Hayes got the nod from the Republican Party. Now, I want you to pay attention. This is wild. When they took the Electoral College vote, which, of course, according to the Constitution, is how we decide, There were 184 electoral college votes for Tilden, 165 for Rutherford B. Hayes. But Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina were still all occupied by Southern troops, and those election results in those states, 3 states, were disputed. They could not agree on who won, and so it was a mess. So Republicans knew that if Haynes could win these states, if he could get Florida and South Carolina and Louisiana, if he could win those 3 states, then he would win the Electoral College by 1 vote. Every vote, even in the Electoral College, counts. So what they did, Congress named a 15-member special commission. They picked 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans, and 1 independent for this commission that was going to look into these 3 states and decide how the states have voted, because it was disputed. And the 1 independent that they picked, guy number 15, he didn't want he knew that the 7 Democrats were going to vote and say, yeah, the Democrats won these 3 states. The Republican guys were going to say, yeah, the Republicans won these 3 states, and the independent was going to be stuck with deciding for real. And he didn't want all that. One guy coming down to one guy deciding the presidency, basically. And he resigned. Well, since the Republicans could do so, they appointed for that 15th member a Republican. And who do you think won the 3 states? The Republicans. All right. So they picked Rutherford B. Hayes. It still had to be, though, even though this commission was appointed by Congress, the results of the commission had to be approved by the Republican Senate and the Democratic House. So, to work out those details, they sat down and they made negotiations. Key compromises. One of them was that the Republicans would withdraw the last federal troops from the South. Democrats would accept the Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution. So we're going to pull out the troops. You accept these amendments, and we're done. And we'll accept these. Now, that is a big deal, because if you'll recall when we talked about, hey, if I were Abraham Lincoln, what would I do? You see that political power can wield negotiations and can wield compromise. It can get compromise. And we see here that because they had something big at stake, that they were able to compromise. And I can imagine there was a lot of bickering and a lot of back and forth, but they came up with a compromise. And I still say that the Civil War, if everyone had been locked in a room and you had ordered, Andy, if we had ordered some Little Caesars for them, locked them in a room and said, you're not leaving until we figure this out, something could have been done. But it wasn't, and we went through all of this. So Rutherford B. Hayes becomes president. Hayes sought the support of Southern whites because they favored his economic policies, and he needed those people to support him. And your book talks about April of 1877. Hayes had been in office for a month. They pulled the last troops out of the South. So that is finally done. And so the troops aren't there anymore. Democrats start replacing Republicans in local governments, in state governments. And once again, you'll see that the South kind of builds up this Democrat, anti-black idea that often comes with Democrats. With the military gone and white Southern Democrats back in control, the South, Reconstruction effectively ended. So when they pulled the troops out, Reconstruction was done with, and the Bourbon Reconstruction was over. Now tomorrow we're going to talk about recovery in the South, and probably just go ahead and know we'll do the test on Monday because we've got several things we need to get to before the end of school, a couple of big wars to get to, and I don't want to miss out on that and don't want to fall behind. So since it is open book, we won't review on Monday. We will just jump right into it with a test on Monday. And I know it's Monday, but it'll be open book and you'll have as much time as you need. So you will do well. I know. But here's what I want you to do tonight, if you will, or today, right now. Page 313, section quiz. 313 section quiz. I want you to answer those three. It's three simple questions. They're all describing something, so it'll take a sentence or so to answer each one. But there's three questions. Section quiz, page 313. Do that, submit it, and you will be done for today. Tomorrow we've got several things to go through, so the video will probably be about 15 minutes long. But we're going to finish the chapter tomorrow. Friday we'll have our Zoom meeting and just check in with each other and see how things are going. Love y'all, miss y'all, praying for you, and we will see you tomorrow.